Hey, Joel and Jed here at Nixon Field to talk about fantasy football for this week. Jed, game tomorrow night, Burns and Gaffney. Any of these athletes really stick out to you as good fantasy football choices?
You know, this game's a tough one to call because these two teams genuinely dislike one another, and that makes for hard-hitting, tough football. You could almost look at this game and say that everybody would be a good fantasy pick. Chase Dodd especially, you got to look at him. He's going to want to sharpen the passing attack before Burns heads down to St. Thomas next week. Marcus Lattimore, he didn't get much work last week, didn't need it, but you know, how much does he get tested this week? The Burns defense, you know they want to make a statement against Gaffney. On the other side of that, Joe Craig from Gaffney is a tremendous all-around athlete. He's one of those guys where he can honestly go the distance anytime he puts it in his hands. So this game is a wealth of people. But if I had to pick somebody out, I would like a Burns receiver. I'm going to say a Torian Richardson or a Jazz King to maybe come up with a big night, because that Gaffney secondary, while Craig's on one side, the other side's untested, and somebody's going to have a big game.
I think you raised a good point. You know, another player that a lot of people have taken every week is Dominique Parks from Greer, and as of right now, I think he's a question mark for tomorrow. He's been suffering a groin injury, didn't play all game against Greenville last week, but they really need a win. They really need him against Eastside tomorrow. If he doesn't play, look for Dakari Sitton to possibly be a choice. On the other side of the ball, you can look at Eastside quarterback Drake Thomason. He's really put up big numbers all season long. Even last week, they only scored 7 points, but he rushed for that touchdown. He's their team's leading rusher and passer. In Greer's defense, the way it's struggling against the pass, he could have another big night.
I think you're absolutely right. I think, you know, Parks has been such a key pick for a lot of people this year. With him out, the Greer offense can go anyway, and they badly need a win. I really think somebody will step up then. Another big game our way, Chapman-Chesky. Now, it doesn't look like a big game on paper when you look at the Eagles. I think the Eagles are 3-1, Chapman's 1-3, but Chapman may have played a couple of tougher teams than Chesky has, and both of these teams badly need a win going into region play. They also genuinely don't like one another. This is rivalry week without being in the region. There are athletes all over the field. For Chapman, Will Condry, Andre Hines, Charles Wilkins, Tyquan Samuel would have scored a ton of fantasy points the last 2 weeks had somebody chosen him. Chesky's way, Raheem Hughes, Josh Jones, DeJohn Rowland. There are just so many athletes in that game. You know, neither defenses look really good.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to win. I think somebody offensively is going to have a big night either for the Eagles or the Packers.
Speaking of big night offensively, you know, for people that play NFL fantasy football, Drew Brees has been a popular pick this year. You could almost say that Jake Lambert is the Drew Brees of high school football. Does he play a whole game against Blacksburg, and does he put up those big numbers again?
Well, it's tricky. I think he could put up a game's worth of numbers in the limited time he's going to play. I don't see Woodruff starters coming out for very long in the second half against Blacksburg. That could be a cautionary thing because, you know, if the defense gets a couple of scores, maybe they pull them a little quicker. I do think, however, if you go with Lambert, you can't go wrong. I think he's a good, solid 303 touchdowns every week.
Let's switch to defenses. You know, kind of looking over the games. See, Bowling Springs is playing Emerald, a 2A school, and Broome is playing Union, who's really struggled this year. Last week, Broome shuts out Hanahan. Are either one of those defenses a good choice for this week?
I think either one. I'd hate to lead somebody toward one or the other because I think either are exceptional choices this week. Broome's coming off a shutout, and then against Fort Mill, they didn't allow a whole lot. And Bowling Springs scored twice last week on defense. So either way you go with the two of those, both are going to bring a lot of pressure. I would have to give the edge to Bowling Springs simply because I know what Union does offensively, and they chew up time and chew up yardage. So even if Broome pitches a shutout, I think Bowling Springs will maybe get a couple more turnovers, possibly a defensive score, bring a lot more pressure and get sacks. I'd have to go with the Bulldogs, but it's close.
Yeah, it really seems like you can't go wrong. We'll keep playing fantasy football with the Greer Citizen and Hometown News.